Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to come your way this morning with the third session of the radio lecture series. Last week, we looked at Academic Discourse 2. We delved into communication, all that communication is about, types of communication, and some terminologies as far as communication is concerned. Today, as rightly introduced, we are going to look at developing reading skills. And we are saying that, as has been mentioned from the very first lecture all the way till now, you as a student of the University of Education, Winneba, especially the first year students, you have entered a new discourse community, which is called the Academic Discourse Community. In this discourse community, from what we learned last week, you'll be required to produce some types of writings. You are going to be writing some academic essays, some reports, some papers, and what have you. Now, in order to effectively or efficiently write, you would need to read. You would need to gather information from different sources, put those pieces of information together, and then compose your pieces. And that is the essence for which we are doing developing reading skills as a topic. By the time we are done with this session, we would have covered what reading is and then the importance of reading. We will consider the types of reading. We will look at strategies for reading as a student, then how to develop critical and analytical reading for information. We shall look then at the SQ 5-hour reading technique, a very important one for students as they prepare to write. And then we shall cap it all with reading faults. That's it. Okay. If I were to ask that you give me a definition for reading, what would you say? You can get interactive with us. Type your comments in the comment box or comment section if you have joined us online via Facebook. Let me hear what you think reading is. Alternatively, you can put your answers down. When we open the phone lines, you should be able to call in and then let us hear your answers, or you text via SMS as well. Okay. For the purpose of this morning's discussion, we are going to look at reading in a number of ways. And so the Longman Dictionary of Contemporary English says reading is defined as the activity or skill of understanding written words. That which goes into understanding any piece of text that has been written and presented to you will be reading. Then the Dean of the School of Communication and Media Studies has defined reading as the process of extracting relevant information on a subject from a written material or document. You are likely to be interacting with text every now and then. When you come across any piece of text that you are consuming, your bid or your aim of extracting information, getting information from that text is what is called reading. And then the United States Task Force on Reading mentions that reading is a process of constructing meaning from written text. You realize that from all three definitions that I have given, there are some elements that are running through. First, it is an activity. It's a process. It's ongoing. It is part of everyday life. I don't think I would believe if anyone should tell me that in the course of an entire day, they do not read anything. By all means, from beginning to end, you would have read a thing or two. From the number plates you see around, from billboards, signboards, from signages every now and then, from the labels of the items that we eat, we are seeing text. And then again, reading is a skill. What it means is that it must be learned and practiced. And I tell my students that there is a way to read the various materials that you are presented in the university. Your ability to know how to read a particular material will determine how much you are able to make out of that material, and of course, being able to reproduce the content in an examination situation. Then again, reading is undertaken to obtain understanding from the text that we read. So it's an activity, it's a skill, it is done to obtain understanding. And then finally, it involves written word or text. That's it. Okay. Let me go on to ask that, why do you think we should read? Is there a reason? Is there an essence in reading? I'd love to see your comments as well. I'll read them out when we get to the interactive session. Why do we read? Why is reading important? Okay, I'd love to see that. So once I'm expecting those answers from you, I'm going to move to the next section of the presentation this morning. And we want to look at the types of reading. So as a student of the University of Education, Winneba, you would definitely, as I have mentioned, be exposed to a number of texts. How do you read them? Depending on the purpose for which you are reading and the material that you happen to be reading at a time, you'll be doing a particular type of reading. Okay. Now, basically, there are two types of reading that we introduce students to. The first being oral reading or reading aloud. And as the name suggests, what it means is that you're reading to the hearing of others or yourself. So what I'm doing now, if I happen to be reading, of course, I'm reading from a text, the manual, communication skills manual, and you are hearing me. So whatever reading I'm doing reading aloud, meaning that you can hear me and I can hear myself as well. Okay. Then, so let's say the SRC president decides to, meet the students and then read out a speech to them. That is also reading aloud. If you were to get into a group study situation, and then one member of the group is asked to read a piece of material, that is reading aloud. And those are instances that we find ourselves doing reading aloud in the university situation. The next is silent reading, and as the name suggests, here you are reading all right, but it is not to the hearing of any other person or yourself. What it means is that you internalize whatever it is that you're reading. And so you would pronounce your words internally, you would capture understanding internally, capture interpretations internally, and then that is that. In the university, when a student sits and says that I'm studying or I'm reading, that student is most likely to be doing some silent reading. And so we delve into silent reading and see that there are two types or forms of silent reading, depending on the purpose for the reading activity or reading exercise and the material again that is being read. If you are reading silently, you are either doing intensive reading or extensive reading. And these two both are very important for the success of the university student. And so forms of silent reading, we are saying intensive reading and then extensive reading. I don't know if you have any ideas of what intensive reading would be. I'll love to read those comments as well. And what extensive reading would also be. Okay, let's hear you. And then we shall take that feedback when it's time. We say intensive reading is also known as close reading or academic reading. And this is reading, any kind of reading that is done for academic, professional or vocational purposes. And so once you have a material that you are reading and you are seeking to gain some knowledge academically, professionally or vocationally, and all things being equal, you are going to be examined on that material, you are going to be doing intensive reading. It is also known as close reading, meaning you pay particular attention to every single text, every single word that you are seeing in the text. You give much concentration, and it is usually done at a slower pace. And so you don't speed through the text or the piece of text and then get to the end and realize, oh, I've forgotten whatever it is that I read from the beginning. No. Intensive reading, you pay particular attention to whatever it is that you are reading. Then we have extensive reading, and we say this is also known as leisure reading, wide reading, or pleasure reading. This is reading that is done basically for updating one's knowledge or broadening an individual's horizon. And in the university, it is advised that the student does not constrain themselves to just their field of study. So you may be an economic student. You should, by advice, not put all your eggs in one basket where you are studying just economic materials. We are encouraging that you read outside your field, broaden the horizon of your knowledge. It makes you proverbially jack of all trades, and then we can say master of one. So you master your economics, and yet by extensive reading, you get to know, as much as possible from different places. If you happen to take a storybook, a novel, at any point in time and you are reading, say you just take an article from the newspaper and then you read, to broaden your knowledge, you are doing what we call extensive reading. And it is important that students do that. Don't say, I am here to study political science, economics, social studies, and so I have nothing to do with any other field that is outside my study. You find yourself being skewed towards just one side, and that will not be the best for you. Okay. So we have done reading. We have looked at the definition for reading. I have given you an assignment to look at the importance of reading. Why should we be reading? Then we have considered the types of reading, oral reading or reading aloud, and then silent reading. Then we have also seen that under silent reading, we have either intensive reading or extensive reading. Okay. Next, we are going to look at some strategies for reading. And by this, we are looking at when one sits, the strategies that are employed in reading any piece of text. And there are two of them that we are going to present at this point. First, there is skimming, and then secondly, scanning. Now, when you skim through any piece of text, you read that piece of text rapidly to get a general overview or a gist of that piece of text. So if I were to take, say, my communication skills manual and then go to a particular unit and quickly run through just to have an overview, to capture an overview, a gist of what that particular section is about, I am doing skimming. There are several instances where people do skimming, several instances where you, the student, may do skimming. When you look at what is on the news by, running through a website. So you access a particular website, Ghana News or something, and then you quickly go through the articles that are there, just so that you know what is on the news at the time, this morning. Ideally, you are doing skimming. Then when you go to the library, you visit the library, pick a book, and you want to see whether the book is worth reading or not, if it's going to meet your expectations, your requirements for the morning or for the day or not. You would want to glance through, take note of some few things in the book, and then that is also known as skimming. Okay. Then when you have entered a query on the internet, say you are writing an academic essay on maybe teenage pregnancy, and then you conduct a search on the internet, the results that come, you are likely to quickly read through and then see which of the results will suit your needs for the academic essay that you are writing. Okay. Now, at this point, I want to ask again, can you mention any other instances where students would need to use the skimming as a strategy for reading? Okay, I'd love to read those. Please jot those down, and then when it's time for the interactivity, you let me hear you. Now, there are 5 steps for conducting skimming. So we have seen that reading rapidly through a piece of text to capture the general overview or the gist of the text is skimming. Okay. Now, when you sit and say, I am skimming through a particular material for the general overview, what are the steps that you are likely to be doing? First, you go through the main headings in each chapter of the material. And so if it happens to be like the manual I'm talking about, so a particular chapter is focused on some particular, say, theme. If you were to say that you are skimming, you would go through the main headings in each of the chapters, just to have an idea of what the book is likely to teach you by the time you are done reading the entire book. Okay. Secondly, you read the entire introductory paragraph and then the first and last sentences of each of the following paragraphs. We will do developing reading, developing paragraphs, or paragraph development. And you get to know that paragraphs are organized in particular ways. So you are likely to see the topic sentence, which captures the main idea that the paragraph is going to be discussing. If you are skimming, you would want to pay close attention to the topic sentences. You would want to look at the introductory paragraph, look at the concluding paragraph. All of these will give you a gist or a general idea of the material. And then third, we say stop and quickly read the sentences containing keywords indicated in bold or italics. When materials are put together, there is some science behind how the texts are organized on the pages. It is not for fun that some keywords will be italicized or boldened. No, they are there for particular reasons. And so when you are skimming, you would also want to take very close look at the italics on the text and then the boldened, words. They have some pieces of information to give as far as your general overview is concerned. And then when you think you have found something significant, stop to read the entire sentence to see if it's the information you may need. Okay, so when you have identified the keywords, and then you see that this particular keyword has something that I seem to, be interested in, stop, read the entire sentence, and then you move on. And finally, read the chapter summaries if they are provided. So there are some materials that will have summaries for every single chapter. Aside you going through the headings of the chapter and then looking at the paragraphs, the first and last sentences in the paragraph, you may also want to look at the chapter summary. It also gives some, general overview of the chapter. Then the next strategy for reading is scanning. So we have just dealt with skimming. Now let's look at scanning as a reading strategy. You remember what we said skimming is? I hope you remember. Can you try and then recall? Okay, great. Reading rapidly through a piece of text to get a general overview or a gist of the text is skimming. Now, scanning is reading rapidly through a piece of text to locate particular or specific pieces of information. So you realize that both skimming and scanning, we say they are fast or rapid reading methods. But the purpose for doing each of them is different. For scanning, you are trying to get a general overview or gist of the entire piece of text. And then for scanning, what you are doing is that you are reading rapidly to locate a particular piece of information. And that is that. So before I even go into instances where students are likely to use scanning, can you jot a few of them down? In what instances have you had to read rapidly through a piece of text so that you can locate some particular or specific information? Yeah, let me hear you. So quickly put those down, and then when we open the phone lines or when we go into the reading of the WhatsApp and SMS messages, we can take that. Okay. Yeah, and rightly so. If you were to mention that when you are looking for a word in the dictionary, and that's correct. Yeah. So if, say, you have come across a new word, quintessential, you had never heard that word before, depending on where you were trained before. Quintessential. What letter does it start with? Is it a U, a Q, or an X? What do you think? Okay. If you said Q, you are correct. I don't know how quintessential would ever start with X anyway. Yes, so when you take the dictionary and you say you are looking for the word, you are looking up the word quintessential. Do you think you have to go through all the words in the A section, the B section, the C, all the way before you get to Q? I don't think so. Yeah. So once you go straight to the Q section and then begin to look for Q, U, and then go on, what you are doing is that you are scanning, looking for particular piece of information. Yeah. If you were to go through your contact list on the mobile phone, trying to locate a particular contact, why not? That too is a means of scanning. Okay. Now let's look at the steps for scanning, like we looked at those for skimming. First, you would have to know what you are looking for. You don't wake up and say, I'm going to scan, I'm going to scan, I'm going to scan. What are you scanning for? There should be something in particular that you are looking for. That's a keyword or a query. Yeah. Then, secondly, you look for only one keyword at a time. There are times when you are interested in finding a number of things at the same time. What we say is that you do multiple scans. So you take one keyword or one piece of information you are looking for at a time, and then you scan for that one, and then later come for, which other one you want to look at again. Then number 3, let your eyes glance rapidly through the page until you find the word or phrase that you are looking for. So decide on the keyword, decide that you are doing one scan per keyword or item, and then you glance rapidly through the page until you find what you are looking for. And then number 4, when your eye catches one of your keywords, read the surrounding material carefully. And that's it. Of course, you are scanning because you want to locate a particular piece of information for something that you need to do. So once you have found that keyword that you were looking for, which you decided on in the first place, once you have found that keyword in the text, you want to take your time and then read through, the text. Okay. And so that is about the strategies for reading, skimming, and then scanning. I would want to know instances where you have done some activities that you consider skimming or scanning. Please do let me know. Put those down, and then I'll take them. Okay, good. Next, we would want to look at how to develop critical and analytical reading for information. I tell my students that the pieces of material that you'll be required to read at the university are usually a bit higher and more complex than what you were required to read in the senior high school and the junior high school. Of course, you are in a new discourse community, so you should expect new things. Yeah. Once you are given any piece of material to read, and that refers to all the course items, there could be handouts, manuals, whatever it is. Remember, we don't call them textbooks, but they are manuals, or modules. Once you are required to read any of them, you as a university student must read analytically, and critically. What it means is that you need to go beyond just what is manifested on the text, on the pages, that you may be reading, to seek better understanding or interpretation, behind whatever is presented. And to do that, there are a number of things that we say that the student must do. First, you visualize. And so create mental pictures of whatever it is that you are reading. And the university student is supposed to understand what they read. If you don't understand, what should the senior high school student do? What should the junior high school student do? Talk less of the primary student. That which these groups of people do not understand. When it comes to you, you say you are in a higher educational institution. And so you must understand. You must have some comprehension. And these are guidelines for that. So you visualize whatever it is that you are reading. Create mental pictures, characters for the various things that you are reading. Ask yourself questions. What does this mean? So you consistently will stop when you have read a piece of, the material, say a paragraph. What does this mean? Is it contributing to what I set for myself, the goals I set for myself before I started the reading? You want to look at that. You draw conclusions. You infer. What it means is that once you have read the first paragraph, you've read the second paragraph, you should be able to infer that based on what I have seen in the first paragraph, what I have seen in the second paragraph, I'm likely to arrive at this conclusion by the time I'm done with the entire reading. Yeah, your brain should actually do that interaction or interactivity inside, even as you read pieces of text. And then you need to reread to clarify. If you get to a point you realize you're not really understanding the things that you are reading, please feel free, go back, read over. And I tell my students, have time to read. Those of us who set the questions have time to set the questions. We have time to sit and review the questions and all that. If we are getting time to set the questions, you cannot shortchange yourself by not having time to read. Sit, make time, and study. Okay. Then you may need to adjust your reading rate, slow down or speed up. If you realize that you've been able to capture the meaning in a particular paragraph, why not speed up and then go to the next? You may not need to read so slowly, especially certain sections where you are already familiar with. You try to connect the text to something you read in another book, what you know about the world, or to something you have experienced. And I tell my students, don't separate what you study in class from how you live. If you can find a relation between what you are studying and how you live, or the various experiences that you have on daily basis, I believe that comprehension will be aided and you'll be able to recall the things that you are studying. Yeah. And then finally, use print conventions. I've mentioned that. Look at keywords, look at bold print, italicized words, punctuations. Don't close your eyes when you read, especially when you are reading closely, which is intensive reading. You want to pay particular attention to all of these. Okay, if you have any questions, kindly jot those down. We are going to take those questions very soon, and then we would address them. Okay. The next is to look at a reading technique that has been tried and tested over the years to aid understanding and retention. Now, remember, the essence of extensive reading is to broaden one's horizon of knowledge. The essence of intensive reading is to prepare for academic, professional, or vocational, endeavors. If you are studying any material, if you are reading any material, you know you are going to be examined on it, you would need to read intensively. How do you go about that? How do you do close reading? This is one technique that has been tried and tested over the years, and we usually would introduce our students to it. It's called the SKILL5R. SKILL, the figure 5, and then R. What it means is that S will stand for one concept, kill another. Then the R's are 5, and each of them means something. I'm going to go through that quickly. The first of this reading technique is survey. SURVER. What we mean by that is that don't just run into a reading exercise and start reading. Prepare yourself for the reading activity. Now, I would cite this example. If you were to visit or maybe have dinner in a very good restaurant, or attend a function where they say that it is buffet, serve yourself. Usually the food that you are served comes in 3 courses. The first course is usually the appetizer, and oftentimes you have a small bowl of very nice soup, pepper soup with a piece of meat. And if you have paid attention, for those who have attended any of these, you realize that as the soup enters the stomach, it opens the bowels up, telling the stomach that get ready, some main meal is coming. Charlie, prepare yourself. That appetizer here in reading is the survey. Look at the title of the material, look at the authors, look at the various headings, the chapters in there. You'd want to read even the blurb at the back of the book, get an idea of what the book is about. All these are preparing your mind for what you are going to be reading. It's very important. And I tell my students, the observant ones, you realize that usually when you just jump into studying or jump into a reading exercise, the first 5 to 10 minutes, you realize your mind is all over the place. You're not able to really concentrate. That's because you didn't do the survey. That first 5 to 10 minutes is for surveying. So stop, whet your appetite into the reading. It's very important. Otherwise, you may not make the most out of the reading experience. And then the second is to question. The kill there is to question. So set questions for yourself. What am I likely to encounter in this reading experience? So if, say, the section of the material I'm reading is on communication, okay, I'm asking, okay, I'm likely to learn what is communication, what are the types of communication, forms of communication, terminologies of communication. Okay, so I set these questions down, and then I'm expecting that when I sit to read, I'll be finding answers to these questions. Very important. So that's S, and then kill. Let's go into the R's. The first R is read. So when you have surveyed, you have questioned, or you've set questions, now you sit and then do the actual reading exercise, where you are taking a keen note of keywords, expressions, trying to find interpretations, understanding for whatever it is that you are reading. The second R is reflect. As you are reading, you are thinking of what it is that you are reading, back and forth. Am I seeing the answers to the questions that I set at the beginning of the reading expedition or not? So you reflect. Then the third R is record. And I tell my students, don't come out of a reading experience or studying exercise and have no notes. When we get to the next topic, which is developing study skills, we would delve into how to write notes. But you must come out with notes that you have written, you have prepared, based on what it is that you have read. The fourth R is recall. And so you try to remember what it is that you have read. At this point, you may close the book, the material that you used in studying, put your records, your notes away, and then see if you can recollect whatever it is that you have read. You can actually recite it out loud, and that is all part of recalling. Then the last R is review. When you are trying to recall, you realize that you have forgotten a number of things, no problem. Feel free, go back into the reading material and then review it. Very, very important. Yeah. Okay. You could also find someone to explain the content that you have read too. And all these are important. So we have looked at the SQ 5-hour reading technique. The S is for survey. The Q is for question. R, the first R is read, reflect, record, recall, and then review. Okay. If you have any questions on these, please jot those down, and then I'll take them. And then the final part of today's presentation is reading faults. You want to make the most of your reading experience in the university. You want to understand as best as you can every material that you read. You want to retain as much as possible the materials that you read for academic purposes. But there are some habits that people put up that slow down the reading process or impede comprehension and retention. And those are what we call reading faults. Yeah. So poor reading habits that slow down the reading pace, they may result in waste of time. They slow down the reading pace and then they impede comprehension or understanding. There are 6 of them that we would want to present, and then we'll call it a day. First, head movement. Yeah, so you know, we read from left to right. Now, it is said that the only part of your body that should be moving when you are reading is your eyes. If at any point in time you realize that your head is moving like a typewriter, moving from left all the way to the right, moving all the way to the right, there's a problem. Yeah. What happens is that with time, you would realize that you have strained the neck, and then the concentration that you should be having on the material that you are reading will now move to the pain that you may have actually brought up in the neck. So you do not want to do head movement. Relax the head, relax the neck, and let the eyes do the talking or do the reading. Yeah, that's it. Then we have vocalization. And here, we mentioned that the 2 types of reading are oral reading or reading aloud, and then silent reading. Okay. If you happen to be doing silent reading, which is reading within yourself or to yourself internally without others hearing, and then you find yourself pronouncing the words out loud, that is vocalization. What it does is that it disturbs other readers around you, especially if you happen to be in the library. Yeah. And then before you know, you may end up concentrating on, hey, I think I sound very nice. Maybe I should be sitting on the radio and then, presenting some things at the expense of the reading exercise that you are doing. You are there to read, to study. And then all of a sudden you are concentrating. You want to be on radio, come to Radio in the Bay, and let's see what will go on with that one. Okay, so vocalization is a reading fault. Okay, then you have subvocalization. So there are times when you are not pronouncing audible words for people to hear, but you are muttering or whispering. So we see your lips moving, we can hear those sounds. That is subvocalization. We can't make interpretation of what you are saying, but we can hear some sounds and we can see your lips moving. That's subvocalization, and that's a problem as well. Then you have pointing at words. In the lower primary or early grade classes, you would hear the teacher, they would usually read with a board, Amma is a girl, and they have a cane that is, moving. She has a black cat, like that. The university student doing silent reading cannot go, Amma is a girl, with a pen, a ruler, or the finger. No. You are likely to slow yourself down, make the brain move at the pace of the hand, and that is not the best, for you. So you do not point at words. Again, let the eyes do the reading or the talking. Okay. Next, we have regression. And here, when you find yourself reading a piece of text over and over and over again in the same stipulated time, you are regressing. I need to quickly mention that regression can be positive or negative. You remember there was a point we mentioned under analytical reading that you reread to clarify. If you decide, I don't have the clarity of this particular concept, so I want to go over and then read again, that's fair enough. You are doing positive regression. You intentionally went to read over. But there are times when, by the time you realize, you have read the same piece of sentence, the same sentence 5 to 7 to 10 times. You're wondering, hey, I have not moved forward. Can you tell me what normally results in that? Yeah, I would love to read that in your comments. Yeah. At what point do people find themselves, absent-mindedly reading a particular piece of text over and over and over again without intentionally doing that? Okay. And then we have the last one, fixation or fixity of gaze or poor fixation. We are saying everyone who reads is able to capture a number of words at a particular time. Your ability to capture more words at a time helps you read faster than if you were to capture fewer words at a time. So let's say I have a paragraph of, say, 15 words that I'm reading at a time. If I am able to capture just 3 words whenever I look at a piece of text, what it means is that I'll have to look at that particular paragraph 5 different times before I'm able to finish, everything, because the paragraph I'm mentioning has, say, 15 words. But someone who is able to capture 5 words at a time will look at that paragraph only 3 times. With the 3 times, he or she is able to read and finish quicker than I would have done. Yeah, because I'm going to have to look at the paragraph for 5 times before I'm able to capture all of that. Okay. Yes, so just before I wrap up and then take your comments and questions, why are these faults considered reading faults? Why are these habits or these practices considered reading faults? First, they slow down the reading speed of the reader. You have a lot of things that you need to cover, a lot of materials that you need to look at. So you want to move quickly. Once you are into any of these habits, you are likely to have your rate slowed down. They prevent the understanding of text. They make the reading process boring. Yeah, very boring. If I have to read over the same place for like 10, 15, 20 minutes without making progress, that is problematic. And then they reduce retention and recall. Okay, good. Along the line, I gave you some assignments. This is a time to hear what you have to say. The studio lines 050 392 3158. Studio line 050 392 3158. You can WhatsApp your messages or send SMS via the same line 050 392 3158. We can take your comments on Facebook as well. Okay.
This is Radio Windy Bay. Windy Bay 98.3 FM.
That's all we can beat the magic.
Okay. Yeah. Welcome back. We'll take a few of the comments that have come in. Amos Freedom says we read to be informed. Yes, rightly so. I remember I asked for the essence of reading. Well done. I think the last time I was here, I promised some toffees or something. Somebody said they wanted gobe. Maybe we would arrange for that. No, the screen before that. Amos Freedom. So I read Amos Freedom. Okay, AJ says we read to improve on our vocabulary. Okay, that's great, AJ. Well done. Augustina Minta says we read to get information. Okay, great. Ohenewa Penina says we read to improve language and communication skills. That's exactly so. Yeah, so that we would become better at language. Eunice Glover says we read to broaden our knowledge and to acquire new vocabulary. Yeah, great. If I were to ask how many have read anything extensively in the past 1 week, let's see how many would say they have read maybe a novel or something. Cheesy Blink says we read to develop our critical thinking skills. That's exactly so. Yeah, critical thinking skills. You think when you read, especially complex materials. Great. Chris James Zogli says, oh, my best of all, Doctor, we missed you here. Okay, Jumaku Campus. Wow, I'll come and visit you one of these days. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Yeah, and then Reynard Pani says we read to be critical thinkers and improve our comprehension. Perfect. That's great. Okay, Faustina Anand says finding a word in the dictionary. I believe that is for scanning. Yes, I asked for instances where students use scanning. And you say when we are finding a word in the dictionary. Well done, Faustina. That's exactly so. Cheesy Blinks comes again. Cheesy, I would love to know your real name if you can add that, because this sounds very, cheesy. We can use skimming to determine the main idea from a long section we do not wish to read in details. Yes, that's very true. Yeah. So if you were, say, preparing for exams you have read already and yet you want to go over just before the examination, yeah, you can do that. Where I performed scanning was to check the price of a specific item in a catalog. Yeah, okay. So you took a catalog of items that you wanted to buy from, one of which you wanted to buy, and then you check for the prices. That's great. Okay. Ifia says we search for a specific chapter and verse in the Bible. Yeah, that's true. Ifia, what's your favorite scripture in the Bible? I think I should ask for that one. So we search for a specific chapter and verses in the Bible. That's great, Ifia. Well done. Yeah. Dosia Sewa says we read to get understanding. That's great. Pearl says we read to interpret and understand a particular text. Excellent, Pearl. Cheesy comes again. We experience regression when we are tired or being distracted, and that's very true. Yeah, very, very true. When you are tired or distracted with something, in that case, just stop, refresh yourself, and then you come back. Great. Michael Mensah says with the regression, when the words are very tiny to be seen, it will end up repeating same lines when reading. Okay, so that may obstruct your ability to see properly. Okay, so choose reading materials that have some bigger fonts. Amadou Cecilia says it's always due to tiredness. Okay, now that's what you have experienced, right? In one of the classes that I taught, a student said broken heart can also cause regression. When your heart has been broken, you end up reading the same piece of text again and again. Okay. Yes, Faustina says when you are not paying attention to what you are reading, you tend to read the text over and over again, and that is exactly so. Yes, yeah. Faustina, thank you. It would be nice to know where you are, which department you belong to. That wouldn't be bad too. Okay. Grace Baffo says regression can also take place when one finds it difficult to understand a particular passage or the text. Yes. In such a case, you may want to take a break, look up some particular words, and sometimes it's the unfamiliar words that bring about this. Look up those words and then come back and attack the paragraph again. Ekuya says regression happens when you are not getting the understanding of what you are studying. That's true. Ekuya Kwatima. Well done. Thank you. Ifia comes again when you are not concentrating. Yes, Ifia, but what can take your concentration off the material you are reading? I'm looking for a particular one. No one has mentioned yet, and I know students suffer from that a lot. Loud noise. Soji says loud noise from the environment where one is reading can cause regression. Well, yeah, from art education. Well done, Soji. Well done. Loud noise. Yeah. So you choose where you sit and read carefully. Cornelius says, sound not coming again. I think that was a technical hitch. Okay, sorry, Cornelius. Bismarck says, can we apply the same reading techniques in reading mathematics courses like eco maths and statistics? Sure, why not? I remember there was a question that came in class over the week, and I mentioned that you would want to explore the various studying techniques and come up with those that work for you. There was a question that dealt or related with the visualization. Can you create mental pictures? I said, yeah. And I cited a movie that many of you may be familiar with, like Stars on Earth. Some of the students didn't know what that movie was until I mentioned what Ishan or Nishan, the main character's name, and they say, yeah, remember, yeah. So you can visualize as much as possible. Okay. Pearl says regression occurs when you do not focus on the text you are reading. Rightly so, Pearl. Rashid, I read, but sometimes I find it difficult to understand. Yeah, Rashid. So you may want to replay this particular session of the radio lecture series, and then of course you have the course manual as well. Please apply the steps in the SQ 5-hour reading technique. I'm sure they will help you as much as possible. Okay, yeah, those are all the comments. Thank you so much, all those who have commented. Thank you. I guess we are not receiving any phone calls this morning, but we are grateful to you for the questions, the comments that you have sent through. If you have any follow-up questions, you can always get in touch with your lecturers in class. Please be punctual. Don't miss class. Very soon, you'll be writing mid-semester exams, and we are hoping that you are all able to prepare yourselves and then carry yourselves along. Thank you for your time, and see you same time next week. Okay, bye-bye.
This is Radio Windy Bay. Windy Bay.